All right, everyone, it is 7 o'clock. I'm about to go live on YouTube. And we are live. You guys can begin the meeting whenever you'd like.
Thank you, Jacob. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josephine Spencer, and I'd like to welcome you to the White Lake Township Zoning Board of Appeals. This board is a quasi-judicial board, which consists of 5 members. In order for your variance to be granted, you must receive a majority vote from the full board. In order for this board to grant a variance, you must prove a practical difficulty exists. Unfortunately, personal circumstances or financial hardships cannot be considered by this board. If your variance is granted, you have 6 months to obtain the required permits, or your variance will expire and you must reappear before this board. If your variance is denied, you have the right to appeal this decision. By state statute, you must appeal to the circuit court and have 30 days to file an appeal. There is no other township board that can overrule this decision. All cases will be heard in the order they appear on the agenda. I will call the case, staff will give their review, and the proponent will have 10 minutes to speak. The board will then ask questions of the proponent, and then the public hearing will be opened. Each member of the public who wishes to speak will have 3 minutes to do so. We ask you please state your name and address for the record. After the public hearing is closed, the proponent will have 5 minutes to address any questions or concerns. It will then be brought back to the board for consideration, a motion, and a roll call vote. And with that, Hannah, may we have a roll call, please?
You may. Powell?
Here, Monument, Colorado.
Asseltine?
Present, White Lake Township.
Schlack?
Present, White Lake, Michigan.
DeHart?
Here, White Lake, Michigan.
Spencer?
Here, White Lake, Michigan. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
And do we have a support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have before us the minutes of June 24th, 2021. Are there any changes to be made?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we skipped the Pledge of Allegiance. If you want to do that.
Oh, we can do that. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
One
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Not that I'm complaining, but the type is a little small on this agenda. So moving right along.
We'll fix that.
Thank you.
I have to concur with our chair.
Thank you. Otherwise, it's a beautiful agenda, Hannah.
Yes.
Trust me on that.
That's Justin, not me.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The June 24th minutes are in front of us. Do we have any motions to approve, or is there any corrections that need to be brought up?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. And do we have a support?
Support.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Our first case, the applicant is Stone Hollow Properties and Development LLC. The location is 4355 Jackson Boulevard, also identified as 1207-181-004. The applicant requests to construct a single-family house, requesting variances from Article 3.1.6.E R1D, single-family residential, maximum building height, minimum lot area, and minimum lot width. For the record, 17 owners within 300 feet were notified of the proposed variance request. No letters received in favor, no letters received in opposition, no letters returned by United States Mail. And with that, may we have staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, board members. This property is approximately 9,105 square feet in size, excluding the road right-of-way. It's located at 4355 Jackson Boulevard, west of Ormond Road, east of Jackson Court. It's zoned R1D, single-family residential. The proposed house would utilize a private well and private septic system for sanitation. The applicant, on behalf of the property owner, is proposing a new house on this property. The parcel is non-conforming by 2,895 square feet in lot area and 5 feet in lot width. So it's 75 feet in width. 80 feet is required in R1D for lot width, and 12,000 square feet is required for lot size. The proposed house is approximately 4,098 square feet in size. It is a 3-story house, including a 2-car attached garage that's 400 square feet in size. When you exclude the garage, the ground level is 955 square feet in size. There are 2 350 square foot covered porches that are proposed. And maybe you can see this rendering here. So that's from Jackson Boulevard looking north. So there's a covered porch on the ground level, a covered porch on the second level. They're each 350 square feet in size on the south side of the house. The submitted site plan shows the covered porches projecting 12.16 feet off the front of the house, which would meet the 30-foot required front yard setback. The architectural plans show the porch posts projecting 12.52 feet off the front of the house. So that's an additional 4.32 inches that wasn't accounted for on the site plan. It would be projecting into the front yard setback, and a variance was not requested or published for the front yard setback. The house is, like I said, it's a 3-story house. The building height is 33.5 feet from grade. The maximum building height in R1D is 25 feet or 2 stories. Both the garage and the front entrance to the house are at ground level. A basement is counted as a story if over 50% of its height is above the level from which the height of the building is measured, and that's the vertical distance from the average grade at the front of the building to the mean height level between the eaves and ridge of the roof. So a variance of 8.5 feet and 1 story is requested to exceed the allowed building height. And then again, just to cover our bases for the lot area and lot width, a 5-foot variance is requested for lot width and a 2,895 square foot variance for lot area is requested. The applicant is present tonight, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just to clarify something, the 4.32 inches from the front yard setback that was not published, we cannot consider that. Is that correct? Because it was not published?
Correct.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for staff? Nick?
I can wait for others. Go for it.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, just a question of Justin. This is a very unique home, obviously, with the garage on a walkout side of the structure. Let's just assume, for the sake of this discussion, that the owner / builder meets all the requirements of a basement versus a 3rd story. How would the planning department / building department calculate the height of the backfill with a garage utilizing a portion of that basement area, so that the house itself is actually not the garage, it's the wall between the house and the garage. And so we have a full 8-foot ceiling there that's not backfilled against. So how is that calculation done?
I don't have the answer without looking at it on I'd have to look at it at the time. So I can't answer that question right now.
Okay, yeah, obviously, without the garage there, you have an exterior foundation wall for the house that you can follow all the way around. And you could, in theory, backfill against it higher
Right.
to meet the ordinance requirements. But with the garage there, it's a little bit technically difficult because the house follows a garage wall instead of an exterior wall. And so that height set, that backfill setback or that backfill dimension is complicated in this case. Okay, thank you.
Justin, can you put that picture back up again that you showed us earlier, please? Okay, so I'm looking at the front door, which is the same level as the garage door. So am I assuming walking in that front door is like walking in their basement?
So I think that's the argument that the applicant may make. It's they're gonna walk into a foyer and then walk upstairs to another level. I mean, I can show you the floor plan. So this is the ground level plan. Here's the garage on the east side. Here's the front door. They've labeled this foyer mudroom. Here's a mechanical room that might not be finished. I mean, this they're calling basement. It's going to be finished space at some point, whether this builder or owner does it or somebody else. It's going to be a living space. And the whole point of the ordinance is that if 50%, and then this is what Mr. Powell was referencing, and how do you calculate it? We have to look at, with this specific plan, what was proposed. Over 50% of it is above the height where the building is measured, or above grade, I should say. So 50% of its height is above the level from the height of the building, which is the average grade at the front. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, so it basically does. So that means that when I walk in the front door, I'm in what they're calling the foyer mudroom, but what is actually in the basement area. So the lowest level of the home. And then they're going to mount stairs to go to a living area.
Right. So this stairs would take you up to, they're calling it their first level. I'm calling it their second level. And then there's another set of stairs that takes you up. Again, they're calling it their second. This would be their third level.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that.
So
Thank you.
so Justin, is there I'm trying to see on the second floor on the north end of the great room, are those egress or not? Are those exterior doors?
This, and where my,
No, to the north,
this here.
Back of the house. No, that's
the back of the house, the
very
back of the
the
house.
house, Justin.
This
Go
here.
go up, you go up, no,
That's
go
the
up
front
the
of the
stairs.
house.
Right
There
there.
you go.
What,
Yep.
what do you, this?
no, to the left. Right,
Right there.
there.
So this is probably going back off to like a deck in the back or something.
I'm trying to see, does that,
They're not showing a deck or anything, but I don't know what those doors would be going out to. I mean, it's going to be above grade. So there's going to have be some landing of some sort out there.
How do you know that's above grade, Justin?
I can interject. This is Mario, just to help you guys. That back of that
Hold-
patio,
no,
Is
not,
just so you guys know.
so there's the picture.
I mean, here's the north elevation. So
Ah, gotcha.
So thank you, Justin. Because the question then, the reason I'm asking this is if the area down near the garage is not the front door to the first floor, I'm not appearing to see a front door to the first floor anywhere.
there isn't, what do you mean by the first floor?
If
Hold
the
on, let me-
claim is that the second floor is actually the first floor, I'm not
so
seeing a
let me-
first
let me go
floor
back to this
entrance.
picture. So what are you calling the first floor?
Okay, so let's say currently 1, 2, 3. Let's go with that.
So this front
So-
door,
Yeah, if that is not a front door,
that is a front.
then you go up a level to
Yeah.
the middle. I do not see a front door if that is being, if people want to claim that that is the main first floor.
I think
not-
the guests are gonna come in that door, Nick.
Yeah, and I'm making a
Thank you.
observation.
I didn't know where you were. Thank you.
I'll come back to it again probably. And so Justin, also the, I'm sorry, Mr. Powell, were you finished yet or did I interrupt you? I didn't.
No, I'm
mean to
done.
do-
Thanks.
Okay, so let's go all the way up to the third. We have that overhang / roof with the, I guess you would call, with the porch area. Yes. Is that structurally sound to hold people?
Yes.
Okay. Can we tell from the third floor if,
Oh, you
How-
mean like
I'm
on
just trying
top
to
of,
see-
you mean on top of this, the roof?
yes, yes.
Like, can people, no, people can't go out on the roof of that. I thought you were talking about this. No, this is
Okay.
not, this is not for walking out on top of that.
So it is not designed for people to be able to do that.
Correct.
I know the picture is not showing that. I'm just wondering.
No, you're correct. There'd have to be
soundness, yeah.
structural modifications for that.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't understand. Thank you.
No, it's okay.
Any other questions of staff?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
So Justin, where would you take the grade from? Because in the back of the house, this is almost like a walkout flip. And because of the lot sloping so much, where do you measure the grade from? For the height?
The average grade at the front of the building.
The front of the building. So you're saying that you would measure the grade from basically that patio where the chairs are.
Correct.
If this were a basement and in essence, it is a basement, but if it were flipped and it faced the rear as a walkout, you would measure it from the grade still from the front, which would be the roadside, correct?
Right.
So because the lot is sloped, so the house is basically just reversed.
I think that's the point that the applicant might try to make.
And because I was wondering, well, if they backfilled the sides more. Okay, and the other question I have is the 40, whatever, 100 square feet you calculated, were you including the level 1?
Yes, because by definition of our ordinance, it would be counted.
Even though it's unfinished?
Our ordinance would consider it a story, so it would be counted.
Interesting. Okay.
Could you read to us the language that calls that a story, Justin?
From the zoning ordinance,
Correct.
I can. So the definition of story, that portion of a building other than a cellar, basement, or mezzanine included between the surface of any floor and the floor next above it, or if there be no floor above it, then the space between the floor and the ceiling next above. For the purpose of this ordinance, a basement or cellar shall be counted as a story if over 50% of its height is above the level from which the height of the building is measured.
Okay, and that's what I thought. So we can discuss that. Yes.
So now we go back to where the height of the
Right.
building.
Well, and I
Right.
can be, well, hold on, because that's a good point that everyone has brought up. So bear with me for a second, because the ordinance definition for height of building, the vertical distance from the average grade at the front of the building to the mean level height between the eaves and ridge for hip, gabled, and gambrel roofs.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for that, Justin.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? If not, then if the proponent wishes to speak, we just need your name and address for the record, sir, and then go ahead.
I thank you. I'd like to thank the board for listening to this. This is Mario Gianandrea from Stone Hollow Properties. Address is 510 Highland Avenue, number 173 in Milford, 48381.
Thank you.
Did you guys have any questions for me on this? I didn't mean to interrupt when you guys were speaking. I just wanted to clarify that the back of that middle story there does go out to grade to a patio. There is no deck. That's why nothing was shown on the plan. And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you have a full set of plans, which I know we submitted, that view that you see, the rendering doesn't show that porch on the middle level. That is a metal roof above there that is on a hip. So there's no way to walk out there, and there's no way to have people out there. So there is no intention of having anybody on that upper porch, just to clarify. On the building plans, it does show that, but the rendering, you guys can't get a view of the top of that. So it's hard to see. So I understand why that question was asked.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what is the applicant's name?
Mario
Mario.
Gianandrea.
Thank you, Mario.
So any questions for the proponent?
Go ahead, Michael.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry, Michael.
Mario, you can see our confusion because the site plan does not show proposed grades, and the architectural elevations of the home show the grade substantially below the level of the sliding glass door or actually the French doors there on the second floor. And so it was confusing to us whether that was a deck or a grade level patio.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. If you guys have seen the lot, it slopes, like one of the board members mentioned, from back to front quite a bit. So the way we tried to position the house more like a glove, we tried to position it where on the middle level, as we'll call it, when you come out, you're right at grade. So there's no deck going back there. There's no two-story post. It fits on the lot, very proportionate. Unfortunately, the lot falls severely from the back to the front, which basically causes us to do what I would call a reverse walkout. You have the walkout in the two stories on the front of the house when it's traditionally off the back. And just so you know, the only reason we did that is really, it's the way the lot sits. It goes from back to the front. So I think one of the board members mentioned it. It really is a reverse walkout lot. We just flipped it where we normally would do the walkout in the back. Now it's in the front. Sorry about that. It's a plane flying overhead.
Oh, that's okay. We can't control that, and neither can you.
So the grade off the back is right at grade level, and you just basically walk out your kitchen and you're right at grade. So we work pretty hard with the engineer to make it fit on this lot and make it kind of not stick out of the ground, but just kind of nestle it nice and tight into that lot.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have,
Go
sorry,
ahead, please, Debbie.
Justin, I have a question for you. I guess I'm not seeing this on all the documents. What's on the land behind the lot?
There's nothing. There's woods as far back as it's a fairly deep lot. And then behind the woods, I actually never walked back there, but I haven't seen anybody. I don't know who's behind there, how far it goes, but it's very heavily wooded.
Yeah, I saw the woods. I just wondered if there were homes back there, if those were platted sites, if it was an acreage parcel.
There's no homes back right behind it. I don't know how far back it goes on the aerial. I don't see anything, and I walk back there. It's really thick woods. And the person to the right, or I guess that would be the east, very nice gentleman that we met with, very accommodating, and is happy to see that this lot finally being developed. So as far as neighbors around there, I don't think we're intruding on anybody.
Nick?
Justin, do we know what is the zoning for that lot behind there that Mr. Hart was asking about? You're muted, Justin.
Thanks. It's also zoned single family residential. So here's the subject parcel. This is zoned single family. This is all single family. This is that campground, I guess I'll call it, where this is an older aerial photo. They used to have people living out there and they had homemade septics in the ground, and we
Wow.
got that to go away, and now they have like a seasonal campground here.
So that is R1 D right there.
I believe that, double check, but that, oops, sorry. Yeah, that is single family zoned.
Well, if I'm tracking, Debbie, if this is where you're going, this is, I apologize if I'm going a different direction, but because what was in my mind was, on one hand, I mean, I thoroughly understand a desire, if I'm across the street from a lake, to be a little higher up and see the lake. That makes complete sense to me. My question I had, and maybe again, this is where you're going, is, but then what if somebody builds behind that?
Right, is this gonna block anyone's view?
So that is a single family zone lot. The campground's zoned mobile home park, but the rest of it's zoned single family.
Yeah.
So is this parcel a meets and bounds or a platted lot?
It's a meets and bounds parcel.
Okay.
Kathy?
Yes, I'd like to ask the applicant, what is preventing him from, fulfilling the requirements and not really asking for much variance? I could see the 5 foot, but you could put a nice size home in there and still pretty much fall within all the required variance. What makes you feel the need to put such a large house on such a small parcel?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I appreciate that. As far as a house, it's not a very large house. The house is only 53 feet wide. When we talk about the square footage, the reason the 4,000 square feet is included is because the basement portion, I believe, is included in that. In terms of building today, this 2-story home is pretty boxy and pretty straightforward as far as up and down. Unless I'm understanding this incorrectly, I think the square footage that takes the 4,000 square feet includes the basement portion. We do a lot of building, and we don't typically include the basement walkout as part of the square footage. So as far as the house, this is on the smaller scale of houses that we're building. And the reason we did the walkout in the way it is now is really because of the lay of the land. If it wasn't sloping as much, the basement would be in the ground and we do a 2-story house. To the point of it being high, if you're behind this lot looking towards the lake, this house doesn't stick out of the ground very much. The whole basement is in the ground. So if you can imagine, when you come out of your first story, you're at ground level. So sticking out of the ground from behind, it looks like just a regular, if not to mention, a pretty smaller 2-story house. So it's very unimposing from, we call it from the north side. It doesn't stick out of the ground. That's what the architect and that's what the engineer wanted. We kind of nestled it into the land. We do a lot of houses where we pop them out of the ground. This is the exact opposite.
Well, that's another point that I noticed on the site visit, is that I see your point, but it really does not seem to fit the architecture and the rest of the neighborhood. The houses are, from what I can tell, all 2 stories. We could still debate whether that lower / basement level is, a basement or it's a floor. But the height, I just don't see any houses that size or that height in the immediate neighborhood.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I would just tell you that if you're on the lake looking at lots from the lake side, which the grade falls towards the lake, they all look 3-story from the lake, but yet from the road, they look 2-story. Unfortunately, this is the inverse. It's 3-story from the road and 2-story from the back. So if, I've been on White Lake quite a bit. You look at all those beautiful homes from the back, they all look 3 stories high because they're all walkouts and the grade all falls from the road to the lake. This is the exact opposite. So my intention wasn't to have a big house sitting on the road. My intention was to build a 2-story house with a walkout with the grade from the back to the front, and that's what we did. So it was not our intention to do anything opposite. It was just kind of follow the lay of the land. So if you take all those 3-story or 2-story with walkouts and flip the road around, it's exactly what this is.
Just, and of course, just remembering too, I mean, and I think that's probably all around the lake, but my guess is, unless I'm wrong, I mean, we have a slice I know this for a fact. I mean, we have a slice of that lake, but then so does the next township over. So there might still be some variation there.
That's true. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, this is a tough one, and when the public hearing is over, I'll have some questions for Justin. And I'm just going to reiterate what the applicant just said, that if this house were just across the road, he would not be before us tonight, because the definition of story is controverted in this particular application, where if it were across the street, it meets all the requirements. So it's not too big, it's not too small, it's a walkout in every sense of the word. But we have a definitional issue here that he's before us, and I'll have some questions for Justin on that when the public hearing is closed.
Thank you. Any other questions of the proponent? If not, then Jacob, can we open the public hearing? I'd like to open it, please. Is there anybody present that wishes to speak?
We don't have anyone within our Zoom meeting, but we do have viewers on YouTube. So if anyone would like to call in, the information is on the White Lake website. If you do call in, please state your name and address before talking to the board. It's *9 to raise your hand on the phone if you call in. So we can just give that a minute.
Madam Chair, did I miss about the letters that were sent, or what is that? You mentioned that?
No, I did mention it. 17 owners were sent within 300 feet. No letters received in favor, no letters received in opposition, and none returned by United States mail.
Thanks. Yeah, okay. I just missed the numbers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We still have no one in our waiting room or in the wanting to call in. So I think you guys can move on unless you'd like to wait a little bit longer.
Nope, that's been about 50 seconds. So I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for any additional discussions. Mike?
So Justin's sitting there, he's sweating a little bit, wondering what I'm going to ask him. But so would you please just briefly go through the calculation that you did, identifying that there is an 8 foot building height, 8.5 foot building height variance request. How did you calculate that?
If our building official is listening, I'd like him to chime in.
Good sidestep, Justin.
Mr. Spencer, are you available for us, sir?
I am.
Thank you. Did you hear the question?
I did.
Thank you.
So I'm going to be honest. I pardon me, the pressure just kicked on. I don't fully remember how we came about that. It's been, and I apologize, I didn't take a look at the case tonight. I honestly didn't know if I'd be called upon. I just got on to listen along. So,
and that's okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So if I remember correctly, the reason that 8 foot variance is being requested is because that basement level or first floor level is being considered the first level. So it's making it a 3-story home. And that's where the 8 foot variance is coming into play.
Gotcha. And that makes sense.
And Nick, I don't mean to interrupt and thank you. I thought the variance was 3.5 feet, not 8 feet.
It's 8.5 feet. The minimum height, or is, I should say maximum height, is 25 feet and 2 stories. So this is 33.5 feet.
I see.
Yeah.
I did want to add, I did check the square footage of the house. The first, second floor is 2,700 square feet. So I just, when you hear 4,000 square feet, it seems very large. The house itself is only 2,700 square feet.
But under our ordinance, the basement is a story, so it's counted as square.
I see. Okay. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you guys.
So this is the elevation. That was unfair of me to put the building official on the spot, but where my cursor is,
No problem.
where my cursor is, that's the grade at the front, because the front is the street side. So we took the average grade and measured to the midpoint, which again is here. So that's 33.5 feet. I don't know if that answered your question or not, Mr. Powell.
It does, but let me go one step further, just so that we can all understand this a little bit for maybe what it is. If, and I know this is a big if the house was reversed and this exact home were switched around and the road were on the 2-story side, would a height variance be required for this house?
No.
Okay, so now the question is, there's two things that our board has to deal with now. In a potential practical difficulty, is the practical difficulty in the definition of a story our ordinance, or is the definition of, or is the variance request really 8.5 feet from a normal walkout home? So it's kind of one of those things that it could have been advertised for us to determine the definition of a story in this particular case. And is that the hardship, or is the hardship the building height? So I'm just toying with two different ideas.
So for clarification, the height is coming from the roadside, not the total from the, yes.
And I'd like to just,
Debbie hit it really well when she introduced it as well. If there was more backfill, because we didn't know where the backfill was around this building. If the backfill were higher around the sides and around the back, the average height is going to be less than the 25 feet that the ordinance requires.
and just for some information, an appraiser would not consider that a story and would consider that a basement and would not consider that square footage.
And I have to be honest with all you guys, I have a full walkout to a swimming pool, and I'm well over the 25 foot on that side, but my road is on the other side. And so I am high all the way around in the front, but my house is reversed from this one.
I have a relatively similar situation, complete walkout in the back.
Right.
And I know I've heard backfill and, talking about changing the grade. Our ordinance says that an artificial grade cannot be established on a site for the purpose of a building structure. So to build, you can't just sweep up the grade around a house, sweep up some dirt on the sides to change the grade. Our ordinance doesn't allow that.
And we did have an appeal that we upheld that definition, and I agree with
Right. Remember
agree.
that recently.
Kathy?
Can we go back a little bit about the issue? If and when the lot behind is sold and built on, I'm still curious as to what kind of obstructed view this added house may cause?
Mhm.
It looks to me, and if Justin could pull that up again, I don't think that I would probably put the house there because it's a large lot and they could have a house right next to it looking at the lake instead of the back of a house. So they could put a house right along Jackson Boulevard as well, instead of behind back in the woods.
Mr. Powell, I'm not sure. When I was going down there, I mean, there does seem to be a relatively large isn't the right word, but kind of a sizable, maybe condos or apartments or something. I mean, it seems to me that that bottom corner, if where this lot is that the house is being built, if this were part of that gigantic piece of property, it would seem that this would be almost maybe up the hill a little bit, but this would be the place to put it because I think it's closest to the water. I mean, doesn't the land jut out down into the south there? Or and please correct me if I'm. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, just thank you.
Point.
So yeah, if
Nick, great point.
Yeah. Yeah, there it is right there. So yeah, I just think you'd want to be angled at the, yeah, thank you. Yeah, just at the water.
But the piece of property behind, directly behind is a meets and bounds, correct?
Correct.
So does that not mean that if I owned it and I could then subdivide it and put X amount of how many lots I could fit on there?
If it had enough road frontage and enough land area, then you could get new parcels, correct, yeah.
Okay,
And it appears to have quite a bit of lot width and lot area, so it looks to be a splittable parcel.
right.
Up a quarter there or something.
So we could be dealing with more than one home being developed.
Mhm.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we don't speculate on an if-come. If there was an existing home back there, I'd be all over it, Kathleen. But to speculate on what somebody might or might not do sometime in the future is going to depend on what happens all the way around them. So I have a really hard time dealing with that.
Good point.
Well, and besides, on that side of the house, it doesn't exceed the height.
Yeah.
And it would be just like building behind someone else's two-story.
Right. You don't have a right to the view of a lake simply because you happen to be near a lake.
So
Yeah.
another question.
Go ahead.
Let me see how I can phrase this. So we clearly our ordinance considers this basement a first floor. And by approving that, we're going against our own ordinance. Wouldn't it be better at some point to re-examine that rather than to violate an ordinance?
Well, every time we grant a variance, we violate our ordinance.
That's true. But we're kind of setting up a precedent for what's considered,
No, you gotta be careful. Every single site is totally independent and totally separate from all our other decisions. In this particular site, and Debbie might be able to support me on this, you typically want to walk out. You want to utilize the existing grades on a site to determine your grades and your walkout around a piece of property. And so the applicant is stating that the hardship in this case is that if he wanted to build a walkout, he would have to dig out all the grade behind the house and create retaining walls in order to even do a walkout. It's kind of contrary to the natural grade of the site.
Yeah, the piece that we approved on the south end of Cooley Lake, I think last month, was either identical or almost identical to what we approved in October, but even on the identical property, it was not precedent for the next approval. So,
Right.
yeah. So okay.
I see where you're coming from, Kathy. I mean, maybe it should have been asked our interpretation of whether or not it's actually considered a story, but it wasn't advertised that way. So we have to look at only what's in front of us. And we also have to remember that that 4.32 for the front yard setback was not published, so we cannot consider that part of the variance request this evening.
No, they'll have to push the house back.
Any other comments or questions?
Say for me, I mean, it seems to me based on the way the ordinances are written, you know, at the moment, it's clearly to me a 3-story home. I completely understand in my own scenario Mike was mentioning, if it's flipped, absolutely, it's different, but I mean, just looking at the letter of the law, that's what it says. So whether we agree with it or not.
Correct.
But we have to look at whether it's a practical difficulty, and that.
Absolutely. Yep.
In a unique situation.
Is there additional discussion before we move forward with a motion?
I'd be curious to go through the list, of course, including the.
We will. I just want to make sure we
Good.
could proceed.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that then, Justin, can we have the standards from 7.37, please?
Standard A practical difficulty exists on the subject site and strict compliance with the zoning ordinance standards would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the subject site for a permitted use or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Demonstration of a practical difficulty shall have a bearing on the subject site or use of the subject site and not to the applicant personally. Economic hardship or optimum profit potential are not considerations for practical difficulty.
Okay, so the key words for me on this are strict compliance with the zoning ordinance would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the subject site for a permitted use. In my opinion, we are not unreasonably preventing the owner from using the site, just not in the way that he has presented it to us this evening. The house can be built there within the parameters, so I do not see a practical difficulty. That's my personal opinion.
Well, if you took 2,700 square feet and cut the second story or third story off, you're at 1,400 square feet. That is difficult to make a 3 or 4 bedroom house in a 1,400 square foot house. So I think, in my opinion, it is a practical difficulty.
What were you?
Well, you're saying that if we counted the basement as the first level,
Right.
and then we counted the second level and third level, and if we just took the square footage of the 2 top levels, which Mario just said was 2,700 square feet, in order for them to be able to utilize the lot without, I can't remember the wording of that ordinance, but without the, yes, they wouldn't have to ask for variance if they took the top level off.
Correct.
They're at a 1,400 square foot house. They're asking to build a 4 bedroom house. Even a 3 bedroom house, it's certainly tight in the 1,400 square feet.
I know you're not counting the first floor, but it would be 2,200 square feet without the top level, excluding the garage. So they're
Yeah,
saying
but
the basement's going to be finished, whether, you know, whether they want to do it or someone else is going to finish it.
But the practical difficulty is, and I'm going right along with Debbie on this, because you can't have picture windows, you can't have living space, you can't have bedrooms without a tunnel accessing down to it. So you've really eliminated that, quote, ground level or first story for anything usable that is functional as a home. It's functional as a walkout basement, but not as a home floor.
The minimum living space requirement is 1,000 square feet for a ranch.
I'm inclined, I'm still a little not hard and fast on this, but I'm inclined to agree with Joe. I'm looking at this thinking if it were pushed back a bit and even up, it appears there could be a larger second floor. There might be a slight grade going up to a garage. And then you'd have that first floor that's, you know, got that same concern of, you know, on the same level as the garage, but it would appear that a second floor could be larger that way. And in that inclination of, is the practical difficulty that it wouldn't be used in the way that the proponent wants? I'm not sure that that's a practical difficulty.
So Nicholas, are you saying, could a ranch be built on this site? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, a ranch and then with the walkout first floor with the garage. I mean, even if we're not counting the square footage of that, yes, a ranch going further back, and if it's pushed back a ways, it could kind of get. It seems like it could kind of get up the hill and a little larger too.
Let me ask Justin. Justin, do you happen to know where the septic field is proposed on this site?
So it's shown on the site plan. Let me bring it up on my screen here. Well, they show the tank, but it's in the rear yard.
Okay, so they're utilizing that hill. So if you make that second story larger, they would be taking away from septic field area.
Sure.
Or move their septic field area back further.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't know. There's a 10-foot setback required, and it doesn't show the design, Joe. You're right. So,
Right. I mean, we're just speculating here.
yeah.
Well, I mean, we can see the 10-foot minimum on the top of it there, though, where 10 foot comes to.
Right.
What's the setback? I'm trying to read it. I can't read it on that.
It's 56 feet.
From the lot line. So the back of the house is 56 feet from the lot line.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they-
Pretty good field area.
Well, remember, you lose 10 feet on the back and you lose 10 feet off the house. So you only have a 30-foot wide area there for a septic field.
But it's still a good sized field.
Well, and if you've got trees back there, you're not going to be putting a field in with the trees.
I didn't know, am I allowed to interject or are you guys
No.
talking?
No, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't know
No,
that.
you're-
All right,
no.
I apologize.
But I mean, and I totally hear the concern about the trees, but again, I don't think trees are a practical difficulty.
I agree.
I agree. Did anybody else have any comments they wanted to make on A before moving on to B?
I'll probably state that, in my opinion, the topography of the lot and the buildability and the livability of the structure are practical difficulties to me.
Okay, anybody else? If not, Justin, can we have a unique situation?
The demonstrated practical difficulty results from exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the subject site at the time the ordinance was adopted or amended, which are different than typical properties in the same zoning district or the vicinity.
So I would say, even though I'm not inclined to see a practical difficulty, if I were to have seen a practical difficulty, this just doesn't seem like a lot that's squeezed or tiny or unbuildable. I mean, it seems that there's room if I were inclined to see a practical difficulty.
Any other comments on that one?
My opinion would be, this is very unique because we pointed out that if this were just across the street, it wouldn't even be before us. So this is very unique to the entire area to have this before us.
If they ever develop that land behind them and put the road in up, and then that would be considered the front of the house. And we wouldn't even be here.
That's an interesting question that Justin can wrestle with. House on this lot with 2 frontages, how would he interpret that?
It'd technically be 2 front yards, so you'd have to take under our definition of the ordinance at the highest, it would still be here if it was a through and reverse lot.
What would be the natural grade you'd measure from though? Which frontage?
The highest one.
So they would meet the requirements as Debbie just said.
I should say the highest height.
Oh, I see. I
Sorry.
gotcha.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't imagine if a neighborhood goes into that, even a little court goes into that area, that this house would then suddenly have a road, road access to that, right?
No, I was just.
We can't speculate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't, it wouldn't even be logical, but okay.
C, please.
The applicant's problem is not self-created.
Comments?
Okay, this one's tough because he's submitting a home that's in my opinion, would be a 2-story home instead of a ranch. So he's submitting something that is causing him to come before us.
Right, which in my opinion is self-created, but again, that's my opinion. D, please.
The variance would provide substantial justice by granting the property rights similar to those enjoyed by the majority of other properties in the vicinity and other properties in the same zoning district. The decision shall not bestow upon the property special development rights not enjoyed by other properties in the same district, or which might result in substantial adverse impacts on properties in the vicinity.
And this is where I would say if I did see a practical difficulty, I would actually be inclined to see it as a substantial justice issue, because if it were sitting on the other side of the road, it would be that way.
Right, but
I don't see a practical difficulty.
and we're not denying substantial justice. We're not taking away his right to build.
Correct.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
If no one else has comments, E, please, minimum necessary.
The variance shall be the minimum necessary to grant relief created by the practical difficulty.
Well, I don't see a practical difficulty, so.
To be blunt, if the house is moved back and there's room.
Yes. So having gone through all of the standards and we voiced individual opinions, would somebody like to move the motion?
Before we move the motion, I just ran something through my head and I just throw it out there because I'm thinking, all right, so if the applicant were to resubmit, and I think Justin will pick up on this, if the applicant were to resubmit with a flat roof, no pitch whatsoever, it would be more than 8 feet lower. So he would be under the maximum height, but then we would still be requested to grant a variance on the story issue, not just the maximum height, because our ordinance defines this as 3 stories and the ordinance only allows a 2-story structure.
Correct.
And there's still the front yard setback issue as well, correct?
Yeah,
No,
we can't deal with that.
no, just the minimum lot width and the minimum lot area.
Well, and I'm just referring to the tiny, yeah, okay.
So, my question is, in light of what Mike just said, how would we handle this situation if that's what we kind of wanted to go for?
It's the same, it'd be the same request, whether it was, I think the point he was making is that the request would be the same in either scenario. They'd still be here, whether it's 8.5 feet or a third story. So the request wouldn't change.
Which means we wouldn't be able to hear it again, correct? It hasn't changed.
Well, no, if he did what Mike suggested, then they could hear it again because you would be changing the
No,
plan.
I think he's bringing up a hypothetical if it came in the way that he described with the flat roof.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, our action would either be tabling or denying and returning to the board, correct?
If it were the same request.
No, it wouldn't be the same request if the suggestion of what Mike made was acted.
Oh, yeah, if correct.
And we'd wrestle with the exact same issues and come to the exact same conclusions that each one of us have already, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Are we prepared for a motion?
So Madam Chair, maybe we could have some help from Justin. If the board member were to make a motion in the positive and it were to fail, we would then have to make another motion, correct, in order to have a denial.
Correct. If a motion to approve failed, then there would need to be a motion to deny.
We had that scenario last month, actually. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know you remember. I'm just saying it in general. Yep.
Yeah.
Is there any advantage in starting the motion with the positive or just jumping into the negative motion? Is there any, there's no protocol or Robert's rules for which motion is put forth first?
No, there's no,
No.
it's just more theater if something fails and we do another one.
Good way to put it.
That being said, somebody else make the motion.
I did it last time. When we
I
were-
can't.
Okay, I will make the motion.
Thank you, Nick.
I'm gonna scroll to the appropriate place. And I ask for your patience. I move to deny the variances requested by Stone Hollow Properties and Development LLC for parcel number 12-07-181-004, identified as 4355 Jackson Boulevard, due to the reasons stated in our discussion over zoning ordinance section 7.37 and the factors that must be satisfied.
And do we have a support on that?
Support.
Thank you, Kathy. Hannah, may we have a roll call, please?
Black,
Yes. Yes to
Wasserstein?
deny.
Yes.
Powell,
Well, I was heading a different way, but I believe my board members have convinced me, even though I believe that there would be substantial justice in awarding this, but I believe our criteria supports the fact that there are options, and so I vote yes.
DeHart,
No, I believe that there is a practical difficulty with this site.
Spencer,
I'm going to vote yes. Mario, I'm sorry you don't have your variance this evening. Well, my only suggestion as the board chair is possibly rethink the site. Maybe talk with Justin and Nick in the building department, see if they have any recommendations for you, and then you can be back before us and hopefully get something built.
I appreciate the board listening to my response, though I respectfully disagree with your outcome. I understand it, and I'll talk to everybody later.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time and thank you as well for all the work you're doing here.
Our next case is Valerie Thompson, 9417 Cedar Island, also known as 1235-254-015. The applicant requests to construct an addition to a single-family house requiring variances from Article 3.1.6.e R1D, single-family residential front yard setback and maximum lot coverage. For the record, 27 owner occupants within 300 feet were notified of the proposed variance request. No letters received in favor, no letters received in opposition, and no letters returned by United States Mail. And with that, may we have staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property is 17,328 square feet in size. It's located at 9417 Cedar Island Road. It's located on Round Lake and zoned R1D. The existing house on the property is approximately 1,600 square feet in size and utilizes a private well and private septic system for sanitation. The applicant is proposing an addition, would be 301 square feet in size. It's on the front side of the house. It would connect the house to the existing 3-car detached garage, which is 666 square feet in size. The garage is non-conforming. It's located 10 feet from the front property line in the R1D zoning district. The minimum front yard setback is 30 feet. A lot coverage variance request is not required. So the request tonight is, I know it was published that way, but it's not required. So a front yard setback variance is being requested. The addition would be 24.9 feet from the front lot line. So that's a 5.1 foot variance request for the house. And then the garage would have to be included because it would become part of the house. So that's 20 feet, resulting in a 10-foot setback. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, and the applicant is present tonight.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Could you help us see why on that drawing, why it jogs the addition? Why right near where it connects with the garage, why does it jog toward the road?
That'd be a question for the applicant.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, and I know we'll get to that in a little bit here then. Okay. Is it, I mean, the garage is already in place. So because we're essentially changing the definition of the garage, well, let me say that differently. Because it's being attached to the house, it's not that we're necessarily increasing a nonconformity since the garage is already there. Is that a correct way to look at it?
Right. So we're just covering the existing garage. So if you were to grant the variance, it wouldn't confer upon this property approval to have an addition or the house extended to be 10 feet from the front lot line. It would only apply to the garage. So it's just covering the bases. I guess you could skip granting that portion of the variance, and if you were to so inclined to approve it, but the reason I included it because it is being
Yes.
Or would become part of the house. So
it may not be increasing nonconformity, it's more recognizing what's already there.
Right. So the increase in nonconformity is this 5 feet here.
That 5 right in there. Right. Okay. Thank you, Justin.
Any other questions of staff? If not, if the proponent is in the audience,
I am.
Valerie, please just for the record, state your name and address and then explain to us why you're here before us this evening.
My name is Valerie Thompson. My address is 9417 Cedar Island Road, White Lake, Michigan, 48386.
Thank you.
The reason you asked why it bumps out. So what I'm trying to do is expand my kitchen 5 feet, that's the front of my house. But the space between my house and my garage that I'm trying to attach with, I would like to put in a laundry room and a mud room in that, because right now my laundry room is down in my basement and I have very steep, narrow basement stairs since my house was built in 1939. So I'm just trying to get 2 rooms out of that. And because it's only a 10-foot gap between the two, I need the length distance. So that's why. And I have to get 5 steps into that area because there's a 5-step difference between my house, my front door, down to my garage. So I have to come out my front door and go down. It's actually 6 steps to get to the level of my garage. So within that small little area, I'm trying to get a laundry room, a mud room, and I have to get 5 steps in there, which of course are going to take up 3 feet of it.
That helps with my follow-up question, which was why it was going towards the road and maybe not away from the road down the other side of the house.
Correct.
Thank you for helping with that.
Not a problem. And there's a window right there that I don't want to lose on the side of the house.
Any other questions of the proponent?
So,
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just
Mike, you go.
wondering if she could very succinctly state what she thinks her hardship is.
My hardship is, yes, this is my pine box house. So I plan on being here until they carry me out. And I'm already 62. And quite frankly, having to shovel my way to the garage in the dead of winter is right now not the easiest thing in the world. Taking the trash out is not the easiest thing in the world. Having to go down a very steep flight of steps to get to my laundry room in the basement is not the easiest thing in the world. And as I get older, it's just going to become more difficult and quite frankly, more dangerous for me. So I'm just trying to get my house to the point where it's as easy as possible for me for the long haul until I'm hopefully 80 some odd years old living here.
For the record, you're just a youngster, Valerie.
I just
Kathy?
retired.
Yeah, in order not to, have to even request a variance, is there another design? I mean, you have a deck and you have a shed, and it would appear to me that you could put an addition on somewhere else where you wouldn't have to request a variance.
I'm trying to attach my house to my garage, and the only place I can do it is a place that requires me to request a variance. It's the bump out of the kitchen. I don't need a variance for. I'm within the setback requirement. The only part of that that doesn't meet the setback is the part that attaches my house to the garage. And it was also explained to me by Justin, regardless of where I put it, the second I attach to that garage, because the garage is non-conforming, that my structure becomes non-conforming. So there is absolutely no way for me to attach my house to my garage without requesting a variance.
So that's your main goal, is you want to attach the house to the garage so you don't
Correct.
have to go outside. Okay.
Correct. So I can get into my garage without having to shovel. Yes, just to even take my trash out in the winter.
And for clarification, oh, sorry, Joe. Sorry.
Okay, just so you understand, Valerie, the answer you gave to Mike's question on practical difficulty is unfortunately a personal circumstance that this board cannot consider when granting variances. We are prohibited from granting a variance for personal circumstances or financial hardships.
other than a personal circumstance, I don't understand how it's not a hardship. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I've read minutes from several years wherein elderly individuals have requested variances in order to get their houses attached to their garage, because with the aging process, it becomes a hardship to have to go outside to get to a garage.
I understand that, but what you have to understand is each case is looked at in its own merits. And if the case before us this evening were identical to yours, we may have granted that one and not granted yours because you are presenting a personal circumstance. You are using the situation that your basement has very narrow steps going down, that it's hard for you to shovel the walkway to your garage. It's more convenient because you don't want to go down the basement to use your laundry room, but those are personal circumstances. And I'm telling you, I cannot consider them. Just so you know.
Can I ask what's considered a hardship if not personal circumstances of aging in a home?
Well,
That's not, don't, that's a rhetorical question. You're not.
Yes, I know. I'm just telling you my personal opinion. At the beginning of this meeting, I had said, in order for this board to grant a variance, you must prove a practical difficulty exists. Unfortunately, personal circumstances or financial hardships cannot be considered by this board. I just wanted you to know that before we kept on going.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, Mike.
I can certainly add to that, Joe, but on a little bit different twist, at least where my crazy mind is going. Where Ms. Thompson has the problem is she made it personal to herself. Instead of looking at the structure and stating that it's a 1939 structure, doesn't meet any of the current codes for access to the basement. And I, for one, would not like to have to go outside in a snowstorm to get into to bring my groceries in. So it's not personal, it's specific hardship due to the structure and the location of this residence.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry, didn't mean to make it personal.
Nope.
No,
That's
no,
fine.
you're fine. You're fine.
So do you want me to restate my reasons?
No, you've already
No,
put it
you're
in
good.
writing, so unfortunately you can't do that. I mean, you can restate it, but you have it in writing. It's very clear in writing in your letter what
Right.
what you're specifically looking for. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah. So,
No, you
sorry,
go.
go
You
ahead,
go.
Kathleen.
No,
No, I
you
already
go.
asked a question.
No, I was just gonna make a comment and not ask a
Go for it.
question. Questions are more important.
But okay, and I guess I'm still just needing clarification. I know you answered it, but so where it connects to the garage, I mean, I get the piece moving over, the kitchen can move out, that doesn't need a variance where it connects to the garage. I understand by connecting to the garage, that's a different variance issue, but again, that little part where it bumps 5 feet, now, did you say that's where stairs go down, or there's like,
From the house to the garage, yes.
And then is there like a door to the garage right on the side there, and that's why that
Correct.
little bump out? Okay,
Correct.
so
There's a door
that's
that goes into the garage.
so then the challenge is that there is a physical piece already in place, and that's why a variance is needed
Correct.
to get to that location. Okay.
Kathy?
Well, just kind of reiteration, we've already said, age is not a practical difficulty. And in terms of other cases in the past that have been granted, Joe, I don't know if you were on the committee with me at the time, but I actually cried at the meeting because it was a young man with 2 children, young children, and his wife had just died of breast cancer. And he wanted to do exactly what Valerie wanted to do, have an attachment from his house to his garage. And it didn't fit a practical difficulty. I mean, how sad was that? This man's left with 2 children. We denied him. It was hard. It was horrible. But, doing due diligence to what our requirements are, we sometimes have to make these very tough, sad and painful decisions.
And for the record, Kathy, I was on that meeting with you. I do remember it clearly.
It still haunts me to this day, but
Yep.
that's what we had to do.
Yes. Any other questions? If not, Jacob, is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this case? I'd like to open the public hearing.
We currently have no members of the public with us, but we do have viewers. So I will say again, if you'd like to call in, the information is on the White Lake website. And please state your name and address before addressing the board. Use *9 to raise your hand if you'd like to speak.
No takers, Jacob?
No takers.
Okay, then I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for any additional discussion or consideration.
I have a question. So the garage is non-conforming right now. So, and the house is conforming on the setbacks, correct, Justin?
Correct. The house is conforming to setbacks.
So the garage is causing the practical difficulty.
Well, the addition is because the addition is 5 feet into the setback. So it's
The little bump out piece that takes it down to the door to the garage, correct?
that's what the applicant said, yes.
Okay.
There was I did have a question too. There were two survey stakes. One said,
Yeah, never mind, just ignore them. They got misplaced, sorry.
okay, all right. I guess that's all I have.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I guess a question, and it's not the Zoning Board of Appeals' role or duty to design a site, but I don't know, maybe you could get access around the back, I know it doesn't work with it, but access can be changed. You can add stairs and a door somewhere else. I mean, making an access point somewhere here and putting a different window somewhere. I mean, windows and doors can move, steps can move. So that's just something to consider.
But still, if you attached it to the garage, you'd still end up having to have a variance because the garage then makes the whole house non-conforming, correct?
There may be a way around that if the addition conformed. So we'd have to look at it.
But
And
Justin,
I'm seeing two questions. I'm seeing the garage is already there. I mean, so that's one thing. And if we're connecting, I mean, in no way do I see that personally as increasing nonconformity simply by connecting to a garage. That to me is pretty straightforward and clean. The little 5-foot bump, I understand the logic of wanting to get down to the door that's currently there, but I think that's a separate issue. And I guess making sure we're talking, I mean, for me at least, thinking about both of those separately. And maybe that's what you were saying about, was it Justin, about does that door still need to be there? Or does the window on the house still need to be there? Is that what you were saying?
That was kind of what I was driving
A
at.
hypothetical, yeah.
Right. I was just speaking hypothetically. It wasn't.
Sure.
Yeah.
am I allowed to say anything?
at this point, no, ma'am. Any other comments or questions? If-
So, sorry. So I'm looking at this carefully, and if the bump out for the kitchen, the 5 feet, does not require a variance.
Right.
What if it went, okay, I've got it on another screen, but what if that little jog, if that wasn't there, if it just went straight over to the garage? I can't remember where the steps were to the garage, but I guess you're right, the door, the steps could be moved, but if that little jog was cut off, would we still be in the same boat, Justin?
We'd have to see if that point could meet the front yard setback.
Really looks like it could. I mean, just eyeballing it, it would be so close. I know that's not math or science, but I mean, it just looks like it would come pretty close there.
How many feet is that little bump?
Looks like about 5, right? Somewhere around 5.
It's probably about 5-ish. I could measure it. I'd have to get the plan and scale it.
They're on their way.
Well, the numbers are right there. So,
Well, keep in mind the property line curves.
oh, it's curved
Yeah, I
thing.
see
Yep,
that.
yep,
Right.
yep.
So I can measure it. I think Joe's bringing the plan down.
We have 22, 15. So there's 7 on the front. Take off the. Huh.
So I have the plan. I'm going to scale it quickly and
Sure. I mean, it does. It might go over by a few inches.
it's like 5 feet and slightly over. So it's slightly over 5 feet, just that bump out area.
And to get to the question that she had asked, I mean, if the line comes straight over to the garage and the door were moved, I'm trying to follow the curvature of that line there. Does that get within the setback, the front yard setback?
It looks like that's possible.
Yeah.
It looks like it. Yes.
I mean, it looks just like within inches, right?
It looks like it's right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we, just out of curiosity, thinking that of looking at the 2 variances independently and potentially now granting the garage variance, because the garage already exists, but not granting the house variance?
I think that's what they're potentially, sounds maybe like what they're talking about.
And for clarity, not granting the house variance still allows the house to be bumped out 5 feet.
Right, if it met the setback.
Correct.
But the question, I mean, obviously that would not create the room. And I know this is the personal hardship aspect, not the zoning piece, not the practical difficulty, but it would not allow for the mudroom and the washing room piece of that. But it doesn't mean that those couldn't be somewhere else or moved back. Yeah.
Where's the septic field? I mean, then it could be an issue if trying to bring it back towards the lake, if the septic is in there.
That'd be a question for the applicant.
And HVAC while we're at it and all that.
Valerie, where is your septic field on the property?
On the other side of the house.
So it's on the, over here?
Yes.
Where's your HVAC, your air conditioning unit?
I don't have an air conditioner.
Okay.
That's a major hardship.
that alone.
Personal hardship,
Yeah.
not a building hardship.
I feel what you're saying. I don't have air either.
I mean, again, I just want to be clear for everybody. I have zero issue at all with the garage that's already there, that whole thing. I mean, I completely see that problem, without a doubt. So that aspect for me is just I'm fine. I'm totally fine with that variance request.
So are we ready to move on to the standards?
Do we, do we do that? Do we break these apart as two pieces as we're going through it? Or how would you, what do you prefer?
Your call. It doesn't really matter to me. Do you got any thoughts on that one, Justin?
I could read the standard A and then the subsequent standards. And then for when I read A, you could address them individually, then we could move on to B. So we'll address them both at the same time and then just move on to the next one.
Okay,
And perhaps in order of, just clarifying which order we're doing it in.
So we would address the house first and the garage second.
Okay.
So is that okay?
that's fine then.
So standard A is practical difficulty. A practical difficulty exists on the subject site, and strict compliance with the zoning ordinance standards would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the subject site for a permitted use or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Demonstration of a practical difficulty shall have a bearing on the subject site or use of the subject site, and not to the applicant personally. Economic hardship or optimum profit potential are not considerations for practical difficulty. And we're addressing the
House first.
house variance first.
Thank you. Comments, anyone?
So again, for clarity, the 5-ish foot bump out.
Correct.
So I read this and if in fact the stairs were put off the back of the proposed laundry room instead of the front, put off the back, and that addition then extended to the backyard instead of the front yard, I see that as a relatively small architectural change. Obviously, there's a window issue and some various other things, but I believe that would solve that problem and not expand the building setback. So I think the practical difficulty would be undone or not shown if in fact that addition were just modified.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly easier to take the designed approach. I understand the logic behind it 100%, without a doubt. But since we're being asked about passing a variance, if a variance wasn't needed, this is exactly how I would do it. But we're being asked to pass a variance, and as we'll go through these, we're asked, are there other options?
Right.
Yeah.
Along with that, if you think about it, if in fact this structure were somehow damaged and asked to be rebuilt, if we granted this variance, she'd have the ability to put the entire house back to the new setback variance instead of where the house is now, or with the 5-foot addition.
I guess I should just say real quick that I wrote up the motion for approval so that could not happen. So that the variance would only apply to the addition. So if it were damaged or destroyed, then it couldn't be rebuilt like that. Because I had the same thought that you did. And then the entire house would just move up. So.
Want to move on to the garage then, Justin?
So the same standard A, practical difficulty for garage. We'll just note that in our minutes that we've just addressed the house request and now we're addressing the garage request for standard A.
I've already set up, but just to reiterate, I absolutely see the practical difficulty here. That the garage is already there.
With the
I
garage.
concur.
Yeah, with the garage. The garage is already there.
Correct. Unique situation?
The demonstrated practical difficulty results from exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the subject site at the time the ordinance was adopted or amended, which are different than typical properties in the same zoning district or the vicinity. Again, we'll address the house first.
Okay,
I certainly see that the ordinances have changed tremendously since this house was built, but not necessarily due to the front yard setback. The building codes themselves have changed. So I certainly understand the Ms. Thompson's desire to have a pretty room upstairs and not want to traverse extremely hazardous stairway. But I believe there's another way to resolve it than add an addition, add an expansion to the front of the house.
and then the garage, Justin?
So again, the same standard B, which is unique situation for the garage variance request.
Garage is already there.
Thank you, Nick. C, not self-created.
Standard C, the applicant's problem is not self-created. And again, we're addressing the house portion of the request first.
Okay, no one has any comments, then move on to the garage, please.
So again, same standard C, not self-created for the garage variance request.
Garage is there, so it's not so.
Garage is there.
Great. Substantial justice?
The variance would provide substantial justice by granting the property rights similar to those enjoyed by the majority of other properties in the vicinity and other properties in the same zoning district. The decision shall not bestow upon the property special development rights not enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district or which might result in substantial adverse impacts on properties in the vicinity. And again, garage or house first.
House first, thank you.
Yeah.
Comments? Move on to the garage, please.
Again, the same substantial justice as the standard D of Article 7, Section 37 for the garage request.
Substantial
Other people.
says the garage already exists, and the vast majority of the other homes in that area have access to their garage without having to go outside.
Absolutely.
And then E, please.
The variance shall be the minimum necessary to grant relief created by the practical difficulty. And again, addressing the house first.
Okay, garage.
Same standard E, minimum variance necessary, addressing the garage request.
If the line is just drawn right over and, you know, the bump out for the kitchen and and still within the, you know, not falling into the setbacks, then it doesn't seem to be an issue to me.
Garage already exists.
Garage already exists. Yep.
That's nicely said. With that, then, thank you, Justin, for that. What's our motion going to be?
Madam Chair, I'll give it a try.
Thank you, Mike.
I move to approve the variance requested by Valerie Thompson from Article 3.1.6E of the zoning ordinance for parcel number 1235-254-015, identified as 9417 Cedar Island Road, in order to construct an addition that would connect the existing garage to the home. Therefore,
Can I interrupt, please?
yes,
A point of order. My wording would be, so identified, reading the motion, identified as 9417 Cedar Island Road in order to allow the existing garage to encroach 20 feet into the required front yard, and I would leave it at that.
oh, thank you. You beautifully said, and that's my motion. Subject to all necessary permits from the White Lake Building Department. And if in fact the home is ever damaged or destroyed, the existing garage must be built per the zoning ordinance standards at that time.
I will second that.
Thank you, Nick. Hannah, may we have a roll call, please?
Powell,
Yes, for the reasons stated during our deliberation.
Black,
Yes.
Esseltine,
No,
Hart,
Yes.
Spencer.
No. Ms. Thompson, you do have your approval this evening. You met the requirements in getting 3 of the 5. Please give staff a week to 10 days for a rough draft copy of the minutes. You'll need to take them to the building department in order to pull a permit.
And I just want to clarify for Ms. Thompson that your addition was not approved tonight.
Okay.
The only thing that was approved was allowing the existing garage to be 20 feet. So you are going to have to get with your builder or whoever prepared your plans to readjust them accordingly. So you can follow up with us, but I just wanted to make it clear that the addition was not approved.
Okay.
For
but
clarification, the
I'm so
bump out, because the other part of the addition did not need to be
I'll
approved.
just say the addition as shown on the plan was not approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we talking about the attachment between the house and the garage is not approved? But if I just bump the front of my house out 5 feet, well, I don't need a variance for that because it's within the setbacks.
You can follow up with us later, but so you could probably find a way to connect it without needing a variance. But you can't go into the front yard setback.
Gotcha. Okay. I think I understand. You guys really, I was confused. Well, you kept referring to the house and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't.
Either Nick Spencer, the building official, or Justin will be more than happy to sit down and explain it to you so that you understand what we just did here this evening.
So what I'm getting is Justin, which told me from the get-go, was the minute I attached to my garage, because it wasn't in code, my whole house is out of code. So now I have the variance to attach to my garage as long as whatever I attach to my garage meets the front setback, correct?
By
get it.
golly, you should come and serve on this board. You just got
I
it
get it.
all.
You got it.
The pay's amazing.
Honest.
Just
And then
kidding.
Kathy, you and I can retire.
That's right.
Okay, moving right along. Any other business, Justin?
There is no other business. I'll just note for the record that you do have an August 26th meeting. It will be on Zoom. Hopefully it'll be the last Zoom meeting that you have because the current plan is at the township to resume all meetings in person for September. So keep that in mind that hopefully your September meeting will be in person. That's the plan right now.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, you
To
will.
adjourn.
And do we have a support? Thanks, Debbie. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you all.